My name is Steve Black. I'm speaking on behalf of Sugarloaf Alliance. We have a mailing address on New Design Road in Adamstown. It's been a strange journey to get here. And I think in a public hearing like this, you can lose track of the fact that this has been going on forever. 4 of you are new to this-ish. Your predecessors went through this whole thing once. It was remanded back to the Planning Commission for further work, and now it's coming back to you yet again. I wanted to speak towards the end of the evening because it's a little easy to have the comments that people are making kind of turn into white noise. That's understandable. You've heard a lot this evening, but I don't think it's right. I think the people at the tail end should be heard just as much as the people at the beginning. And so I wanted to come in at the end and give a chance to reiterate some of the points that you've heard this evening that we think are important, but also rebut some of the things that we think are just wrong. This process, as I said, has gone on for quite a long time. All of the stakeholders on both sides have had extensive opportunities to weigh in. We joke that, you know, in a different universe, I could probably deliver Mr. Natelli's talking points and he could probably deliver mine. This has been going on for a long time. But the testimony tonight isn't for our benefit. I'm not trying to convince Mr. Natelli or Miss Adams or any of the Misters McIntosh of the correctness of my point of view or the Sugarloaf Alliance's views. This is for you. This is for you to hear the public sentiment, both the facts as we see them and the emotions. You need both. And with deference to Tony, emotions count for a lot of this. Now, make no mistake, whatever the justification people happen to be giving for wanting to not have the overlay be voted into existence, the end result of not putting the overlay into this plan area is the paving over and developing of farm fields and forests and stream valleys in the Sugarloaf region. That is what will happen. That is the intention of people, knowingly or unknowingly. That is the implication of not putting the teeth into the Sugarloaf plan that was unanimously adopted just a little more than a year ago. So some of the highlights of things that you've heard this evening, the big one to me is over 1,000 people have signed a petition calling for you to enact this overlay. The vast majority of those people are from Frederick or the immediate vicinity. This is a big deal. We don't live in a feudal society. Landowners do not get votes relative to how much property they own. We protect the smallest property owner the same way we do the largest one. The underserved communities are to be given just as much deference as large landed gentry. We're not a feudal system. The floating zone, the CDI floating zone, which is as a proposal that went before this council in 2021, that is a fact. As a result of legal action, you are now all allowed to see most of the records that were related to that attempted plan to develop and build data centers in the Sugarloaf region. That plan was undertaken despite the fact that the ground is zoned Ag and RC. It was going to be attempted anyway. That's a fact. The fact that Mr. Natelli had engaged in trying to make his properties part of that Amazon plan is a fact. You have, from one of the earlier speakers, the concept drawing for what would go on between Thurston Road and I-270. 8 data centers and 2 large electrical substations. That's a fact. Your predecessors, or at least the predecessors of 4 of you, the previous council remanded the overlay back to the Planning Commission for further work. Further work was undertaken. The planning commissioners were adamant at the end of their process when they took their final vote. They wanted to make sure you understood that they had looked at every single line in this overlay language. They had reconsidered every part of it. They started the process from scratch with a set of charrette meetings. It was a new word to me, I'd never heard of it, but it's a little focus group of stakeholders. They repeated the process from scratch. And that they came out with largely the same result is not by happenstance. It's not an accident. That was very intentional. The boundary of the Sugarloaf plan and the boundary of the overlay makes sense. Boundaries of areas like this need to be defensible on legal grounds, political grounds, functional grounds, and emotional grounds. You can't sprawl across the Monocacy River. 270 is a hard and fast boundary between a growth area and a rural area. The county line is the county line. What Montgomery County does doesn't affect us directly. Those boundaries for this small area plan make sense. So what are some of the things you've heard that you should probably look sideways at? First and foremost, and I'll get a chuckle from Dennis when I say this, there are no maps in livable Frederick. They're thematic diagrams. They're that way on purpose. They're that way so that, as Mr. Natelli said, no one uses those lines to carve in or carve out anything. Those decisions were left to the smaller area plans like the Sugarloaf plan. It has been debated, discussed, analyzed, researched, and decided that the boundary of the Sugarloaf plan is at I-270. The argument about where the 270 corridor is has been settled. In the future, these plans are only good for about 10 years. In the future, things may be different. There will be another plan process, and maybe the boundary will move. But for right now, as of a little more than a year ago, the boundary of the Sugarloaf Treasured Landscape Plan is I-270. Property rights. Yep, everybody has property rights. And your property rights go exactly as far as you can take them without affecting the property rights of your neighbor. That's why we have zoning laws. I live in an agricultural area. I can't put a car dealership on my farm. It's not allowed. I don't have that right. In the Sugarloaf area, there are certain uses that are inconsistent with the area, and if those uses took place, if you put a sludge pit, if you put a private airport, if you put a soccer megaplex into the Sugarloaf area, that is inconsistent with what everyone else in the area expects to live with. So we need to have prohibitions on that. Are those things allowed under Ag and RC? Yeah, they have to go through a planning process. There'd have to be a special exception for some of them. But do you want all of these good people to have to show up to sit on hair trigger for anybody who wants to do one of these incompatible land uses? Yeah, it can get fought out. Do we have to do that every time? We had to do it for the gun range. We had to do it for the mega church. Are we going to have to do it for a floating zone for data centers? Right now, we're talking about a large area plan or small area plan that has been comprehensively considered. Right now is the time to make those decisions, not allow for a piecemeal picking away at a treasured landscape. The Sugarloaf plan was unanimously adopted a little more than a year ago. And by adopting that plan, most of these points of argument you've heard earlier this evening, most of them have been settled. It's not up for debate anymore. Decisions have been taken. The question now is how you put the teeth into that decision that was taken a year and a half ago. This is a preservation plan, a preservation plan. The treasured landscape has been deemed worthy of protection by the livable Frederick process, by the Planning Commission, by the council last year, and most importantly, by the citizens of Frederick County, including these good people here. Please pass the overlay.
Thank you. That is